How are you?
You're good. Please don't tell me you've been waiting for this opportunity for years, James.
Well, I was very excited that when Jeremy said to me, could I interview a multi-world champion and one of the finest shots in the world, I was actually really excited. And then he told me it wasn't Richard Fold, so I was slightly disappointed. But maybe I'll get the chance one day.
Next
How
week.
you finding lockdown then?
It's not easy for any of us, is it? All the plans for this year have basically gone west. It's in the leisure industry as well as what everybody else is. Everybody's got their jobs. In the leisure sector, it's a difficult scenario, and a difficult scenario to see a strong comeback from straight away. I think that people are going to be nervous. I think people are going to be tight with their money, understandably so. And at the end of the day, the last thing that they're going to, choose to spend it on straight away is a luxury product. So I think the industry as a whole is in for a slightly depressed time, but let's hope we can get back up to full pace quicker than I anticipate.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is we all stay safe and don't rush to get it back out. But I've got a feeling one or two shooting grounds are going to be fairly busy the first weekend. But how we're going to be able to cope with that, with social distancing, competitions, etc., will be really interesting. And I know that you've been involved with the CPSA. You and Richard have obviously written with the CPSA to the government, obviously giving them some guidelines. So I think from all the shooters, we really thank you for doing that. And one of the questions, we'll go into the other questions in a minute, but do you think the CPSA do a good job of promoting our sport? And personally, I think they do a fantastic job.
Yeah, I do. I would say over the last few years, my judgment would have been reserved on that. I've had a few issues where I felt, as a sport in general, and as the governing body, we haven't been professional enough. However, with the new appointment of Ian Parker, I think that's a massive, massive step forward for our sport and shooting in general. I think he's a breath of fresh air because he's come from, a life outside of shooting. So he reads it as a business. He's got to read the sport, which he's doing, and he's doing it in the right way. He went round at the start of his tenure and for 6 months listened. And probably copped it from everybody, but he listened. And he never put any judgments, and he made his own decisions. And from what I'm seeing at the moment and what I hear, the decisions he's making are really good, educated business decisions. And I, for one, have given him my full backing that if he needs me to do anything within helping promote, I'm there for him. And I think that positivity, so to speak, to coin a new expression, will filter down through the system, the regions, right through to counties and clubs, and can only be good for our sport in times of crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think he's a nice guy. As you say, he's done his homework. That is a thankless task, and it's always going to be a difficult position to be in. It's never going to please all the people all the time. We know that we're in a sport where everyone's very critical of anything that somebody does anything wrong, which is always a shame. But I think he's definitely the man to steer us forward and get outside.
No question. I think the other thing with it is that we are, whether we like it or not, we're a politically incorrect sport. We don't get the coverage we deserve for the achievements we've had internationally. However, you've got to learn to deal with that. That is a fact of life, and it's not going to go away. It's not going to get any better. No. So you've got to learn to deal with those situations and work accordingly to that spectrum.
So we obviously put out lots of questions and answers. So we'll apologise to people if we don't ask your question. There is literally 4. And I think 3 of them are from Kate.
Yeah, and please don't tell me you wrote the other one, because I know you can't write.
Well,
can I just say at this point, and I was thinking about it today, it's very, very interesting. Have you seen what the price of fuel is now that Martin Myers, Chris Childerhouse, and 1 or 2, Richard King and 1 or 2 others, where they haven't been clay shooting, and there's now a glut of petrol and diesel, what the price has done?
Absolutely, yeah, exactly.
Absolutely smashed it.
I have heard that on the grapevine that the CPSA are going to let everybody out sort of 2 months beforehand so they can all catch up. But
one weekend.
Yeah, exactly. So we apologise if we don't get everyone's questions. There's been literally hundreds. I mean, we've had private messages, emails, etc. So 26 world titles, 13 English, 11 FITASC, 2 compact, 19 European titles, 15 FITASC, 4 compact. I'm not going to go through the rest because we'll be all night and people will fall asleep. When you actually read it, and I just did it on Wikipedia, it's quite an unbelievable thing. And, you know, I've been very fortunate to travel with you for a long time around the world, seeing you win, seeing you lose, seeing, you know, the whole part of you, seeing you laugh, seeing you cry, right the way from your career from the early late 80s to now. And a great question from somebody has asked, what keeps you motivated after so many years?
Yeah, good question. But look, I think anybody that has got any form of competitive streak in them at all, you don't have to ask the question of motivation. It's there, it's constant. I'm competitive at whatever I do, whether it be playing spoons after we finish the day shooting, or going out having to shoot, you know, a perfect round on the last day of a World or European Championship. Everything we do within our sport, I would say that I've been really, really driven up until probably 2 or 3 years ago, and then the advent of me changing guns. Probably the start of it was the robbery we had at home, and having had the robbery at home, I would say that your perception on life changes.
Yeah.
And you know, certain things don't matter anymore, and to chase around and do 4 or 5 shoots on a weekend wasn't necessarily the be all and end all of my life, as it was up until that point. And then, you know, once you have an incident like that, you're almost thankful and lucky to be alive. So your perception changes, and we've had this conversation before. I feel as though I look back on my career and I've got to a point around probably 2011, 2012, somewhere around there, where I actually sat there probably one afternoon and thought to myself, what actually have I got to prove? Yeah. And I think having something to prove in your career drives you on and on and on and on and on. And then you get to a point where you think, well, if people are still expecting me to, you know, prove a point, then I can't see what the point of me doing all this is. So at about the end of 2012, I had a completely new attitude, and that attitude was free for all, didn't worry about anything, and actually I shot better.
I think was it 2012 when you won all 3 world titles in 1 year?
No, 15. That was 15.
15. I mean,
13 I won. 13 I won the World English, the ICI, and the World Fit Task, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't know, and we were in Canada, and we never went to Russia for the World Compact.
That's correct. That's correct.
And look, the motivation is still there. The motivation is still there now, and I think that the mindset that I've just talked to you about was probably the mindset which caused me to change my gun. I went to the factory, I think it was somewhere around 16, late 16, something like that. Hadn't been for 4 or 5 years. Had a great day over there. And Maro said to me, "What do you think of this? This is, this could be,
So this is you going on to the high tech, isn't it?
This, yeah. And this could be, what do you think of this as a gun?" And I picked it up, and for some reason, in fact, it would have been before that, because the first high tech I had got stolen. So it would have been probably 15, late 15, and I just had the best year that I could ever dream of having, anybody could ever dream of having, really, to win the English, the Fit Task, and the Compact in the same year. Is the stuff that fairy tales are made of. And then I went over there, picked this gun up, and I thought, do you know what? I really, really loved the feel of it, and I wanted one. And it's very rare that I've always been clinical, and I think that's one of the reasons that I've been successful, the fact that I've been clinical in. I don't change guns, I don't change chokes, I don't change cartridges. I'm loyal to everybody that supports me in whatever sphere, and because of that, not changing and doing everything, I think that probably that little bit of freedom that I developed allowed me to think, do you know what? I quite fancy shooting that gun, and it was just a bit steadier, and I always felt that if I had any weak spot at all with the MX2000 was the fact it got this. It's such a brilliant handling gun, and they're so fast handling that I felt that because I've got big wrists, and I'm rarely sort of, when I'm pushing the gun, I'm really struggling to get anywhere. I felt that if I was going to do something, it would be I was pushing on too much. So just a little bit of weight, but keeping the same balance and the same feel would have been absolutely perfect for me. So the high tech looked as though it could tick all the boxes. And I duly got one, virtually the first one in the country, started shooting with it, shot the winter with it. And I said to Kate, I said, you know what? I said, I honestly feel as though I'm shooting better with that gun than I've ever shot with the 2000. And that night we had the robbery and it got stolen. And since then, I struggled to find a gun with the same feel. It's just like Ronnie O'Sullivan's snooker cue or Rory McIlroy's golf club. You get used to something and it works for you, and something else can be exactly the same weight, exactly the same to a thousandth of a micron, but it just doesn't feel right.
And I think I've been a little bit critical of you coming away from it. You went for a little bit of lull, and with all the robbery and everything else. I mean, I think the high tech that you're on now, and actually coming into this clay season, I think your timing was coming really back. And I said to a lot of people that watch out. And it's a shame we've not been able to continue for obvious reasons.
Yeah, but I think I finally got back to now having the gun that I had before it got, before it got stolen, and I felt more and more confident with that gun. And the other thing is that I've almost gone back to the stage where I don't care, and whether I like it or not, after 2016 and our issue here, I tried to win. I went out to try and win, to prove to everybody that after the robbery I could still do it. And effectively, I've just answered now one of the reasons why I haven't shot particularly well for the last 2 years. I'm trying to do, instead of just letting it happen like it always does.
Yeah.
And that's only born by wanting to, getting that competitive spirit back, wanting to prove to people that I can still do it after an issue, here at home. And over the end of last year, it started coming together. I qualified for the last 6 shoots off at the British. Shot, honestly, in that final, I shot probably the worst I think I've ever shot in my life. I was an embarrassment to be out there. I've told you when I was after we had a chat when I was driving back to the airport, and I honestly felt embarrassed to be upholding the name of my sponsors in that final. What went wrong, I have absolutely no idea. But after that, it was actually a light bulb moment, and I thought, you know what, I've probably gone out there, tried too hard again, and from that moment on, I haven't cared about what I've done, how I've done it, and since then, up until we've been cut off, my timing's got better and better and better. And another thing is that look, I've never ever, and you know me probably as well as anybody, I've never been a big-headed person. And what I'm talking about, probably 99% of the shooting population would love to be in the position that I've been in and to get into that final and shoot terribly. That would be, probably a lifelong achievement. But why
didn't you do that in 2005?
Because it was you at the end of it.
Yeah, and I remember all the days I wanted you to shoot bad, and then you robbed me of my first world championship, or the only world championship ever. Mind you, Folsey must have been shooting double trap by then, didn't he? Look, so going back to your gun, and again, questions. Do we know you're on the high tech? People want to know barrel length and your choke restrictions.
Restrictions?
Well, there's no restrictions on you, is there?
I shoot 32-inch barrels. The high-tech as a standard gun comes with a reverse grip. So it starts from 7mm at the action, goes out to 11mm at the end of the barrel. And the standard MX2000 was always a standard action, 7 at the end of the barrel. And I just feel as though the standard rig where your eyes go to a narrow point actually just, although the gun's in your peripheral vision, it's still got to be there and you've still got to be looking down the barrel. Otherwise, you're never going to put the shot in the right place. And I just feel as though that peripheral vision of going to a narrow point just allows my eyes to get to the target and be a little bit more precise without a wide gap. I mean, how some people used to shoot the old Shadow Indies, I have no idea. I mean, it must have been looking down 6 lanes of the M1 at one stage. But to me, I just feel that narrow point at the end allows focus towards your target. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing you can do is focus on a target.
And so that leads us to the next question. With the method do you use? Do you use the same method on every target, or do you use all kinds of all the methods that there is there? And can you use just one method?
you can use just one method. I try and use what people would call swing through, coming through behind. Because I'm a big believer that if you come through the target from behind, you will always be on the target, and that's what I teach. And you know, we can all talk about leads and you know, focal points and getting to the spot and everything else. Well, what is that? I mean, what is that? But if you're offline, don't matter what the spot is or where your lead is and your gun is, and you're offline, you're not going to hit it full stop.
No.
Whereas if you come through that target from behind and it goes up in the air and you're coming through here, you can see it's gone up in the air and you can go with it. Same here, if this is your run, the target comes through here, it's a gust of wind and drops, you'll see it disappear and you can go with it. But if you're out here and it does that, you've got you cannot judge that at all. So for me, judging something by coming through from behind, not only that, if you shoot in the same place every time, it's got to be exacting right the way through. So your timing, you can get timing by shooting in the same place at every type of target, because your timing will come, your timing comes, your confidence comes.
Yeah. Do you have a bogey target?
Obviously, you say anything you can't hit. I'd like to think that I've adapted my game over a period of time to look. People always turn around and say the 10,000 hour rule. You can never succeed in sport at the highest level unless you've done 10,000 hours. Well, I would dispute that, but what I wouldn't dispute is the fact that I think the reason the better shots don't get caught out as much as the newer shots is the fact that, as you would know, we used to go to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shoots sometimes if we're doing Saturday, Sunday, Monday over a course of a weekend years ago, and that was week in, week out, week in, week out. So if you think you do on average between 4 and 6 shoots every weekend, you are seeing between 4 and 6 different sets of targets every week, week in, week out, week in, week out. So when you come to a world championship and you get a completely unrecognisable target to Joe Bloggs, you think, hang on a minute, at Caterham in 1989, they built a platform for one day, and we got down on a target curling away out to the left, and I did that to kill it, and I won the shoot. And all of a sudden, that's where you start.
So for you, it's like a memory bank of you build up a memory bank of a visual picture of targets that you dig back into your library. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that's a massive plus point to just shooting. It's a massive plus point to just shooting competitions. See, we very rarely practice. You and I might go and shoot a little bit of skeet or a little bit of trap sometimes just to get your timing, and that'll only be at the start of the season, or if you're having a rough spell during the season. We might shoot 400, 500 a year practice. Certainly wouldn't be any more. But we shoot competitions every week. Now, when you're shooting a competition and you're shooting practice, it doesn't matter because it's just a case of money, and you can go and find another card, find another round, go and shoot again. And you don't put that same effort into practice that you do your competition. But if you're paying for competition and everything means something, then once you've done something in a competitive environment, you'll remember it.
Yeah.
So with us only shooting competitions, the ability to read and keep a memory there is a lot easier than if you're just going out and practicing targets, because you've practiced something, you don't know what you've done. But if you shoot in an environment, it's good.
So for someone coming into the sport, you know, we've had a question here. What is the best way to practice?
Skeet. I've always said it. Always, never shy away from it. It's a brilliant grounding. It's a fantastic tool. If you can break 98 plus every time you go on a skeet layout, you will go to any sporting shoot and compete.
And have you ever shot 98 or more?
No, once or twice. I think 1991 I'd kind of run, but anyway, look, that's, you know.
No, not upset them again.
It's neither here nor there. I've already upset.
You'll only dig up old ground and upset on the skeet shooters again, remind them. I was there, actually. 375 straight in the shooting. I was only there for about 5 minutes. I got bored and went home.
Yeah, well, it's normal for you.
Well,
You're normally home on a Sunday night by 5 o'clock anyway. Don't swear. Don't swear.
I've got another shooting on the way home.
Yeah, probably. No, skeet's a great thing for people to learn. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you angles, and it also gets you breaking targets. And a lot of our shooting, you know, you've got to break. It's all very well turning around saying, "Oh, this shoot was hard and that shoot was hard and this and everything else." In my view, you've got to break as many targets as possible to beat the next player. Yeah. Now, it's all very well shooting 10 out of 10 on the hardest targets that they put on the shoot. But if you then miss 15 easy ones, you ain't going to beat a bloke that shot 86 easy ones and nothing on the hard ones.